2:17 a.m. The Persian Gulf. USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Combat Information Center. The watch officer is tracking 31 surface contacts in the northern Gulf. Tankers, Coast Guard vessels, 3 IRGC fast attack craft holding position near Farsi Island, 2 contacts whose AIS transponders went dark 17 minutes ago. Standard picture for this time of night. She logs the dark AIS contacts, flags them for the duty intelligence officer, and returns to her display. At 2:17 a.m., 500 kilometers away and in a different ocean, the watch officer in the E-2D Hawkeye operating over the Philippine Sea is watching a different display. 61 planned surface contacts clustered in the waters west of the Bashi Channel. Some of them have been there for days. 11 of them changed course 6 minutes ago. They are moving northeast, toward Luzon, toward the gap between Taiwan and the Philippines that the plan has been studying for decades. 2 displays, 2 oceans, 2 watch officers seeing the beginning of the same operation. This is how it was designed. The coordination between the IRGC and the People's Liberation Army had been formalized 11 months earlier in a security memorandum signed in Beijing. Not a treaty, not a public document, but an operational framework with one central provision. In any window where one party initiated a major kinetic operation against U.S. forces, the other would initiate simultaneously, not in support of the first, independently, in a separate theater, against separate U.S. assets. The purpose was not tactical coordination. It was strategic resource exhaustion. The United States could not surge its full response capability to 2 theaters simultaneously without degrading one of them. Degraded by even 20%, a theater response that would otherwise be decisive became uncertain. The framework had taken 8 months to develop. Both parties contributed analysis. The IRGC provided its assessment of U.S. CENTCOM response architecture, interceptor inventories, carrier positioning doctrine, the average time between SBIRS alert and first SM-3 launch. The plan contributed its assessment of INDOPACOM, carrier transit times from Philippine Sea patrol positions to the Bashi Channel area. B-1B response timelines from Anderson, the SM-3 and THAAD inventories available in the Western Pacific. Together, the analysis produced a mathematical model showing that simultaneous 2-theater activation would reduce U.S. response effectiveness in each theater by between 19 and 34%. At the high end of that range, the models showed the probability of at least partial IRGC operational success in the Persian Gulf exceeded 60%. In the Philippine Sea, the probability of the planned force reaching the Bashi Channel before being fully engaged exceeded 47%. The model was rigorous. The inputs were accurate. The conclusion was wrong because of one variable neither party had included: USCYBERCOM access to the communications channel the framework used. The framework had one flaw. It assumed the United States did not know about it. USCYBERCOM had been inside the communications channel used for the coordination framework since month 3. By month 7, they had a complete picture of the operational timeline, the trigger conditions, and the approximate target sets. INDOPACOM and CENTCOM had been planning a 2-theater simultaneous response for 4 months. The operation had a name: Twin MERIDIAN. It had trigger conditions. Both triggers had just been met simultaneously. The signals intelligence analyst at Fort Meade who had first identified the coordination channel at month 3 had not been looking for it. She had been running a routine sweep of encrypted satellite communications between Tehran and Beijing when she noticed a traffic pattern that was architecturally inconsistent with standard diplomatic or commercial exchange. Fixed transmission windows, rotating encryption keys on a non-standard cycle. Endpoint addresses that did not match any known diplomatic infrastructure. She flagged it. USCYBERCOM's exploitation team was inside the channel within 96 hours. By month 4, they were reading the framework document in draft. By month 7, they were reading the final operational version. She had been promoted once since then. The promotion did not mention why. In the Persian Gulf at 2:18 a.m., The two dark AIS contacts are acquired by the E-2D over the Gulf. Their radar returns are consistent with IRGC Gadir-class midget submarines at periscope depth, approaching the shipping lanes. Simultaneously, in the Philippine Sea, the 11 planned vessels that changed course 6 minutes ago are now resolved on the Hawkeye's radar as 2 Type 071 LPDs, 4 Type 072A landing ships, and 5 Type 056A corvettes. They are not heading toward Luzon for an exercise. They are heading toward the Bashi Channel at 11 knots, fully loaded. A third event occurs at 2:19 a.m. Spears registers 44 thermal signatures igniting across 3 provinces of western Iran. Fateh 313 and Ahmad ballistic missiles, Hoveze cruise missiles, Shahed 136 loitering munitions. A full-spectrum salvo against Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar and USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. The IRGC kinetic operation, the first axis. And now the plan amphibious movement, the second axis. 2 axes, 2 oceans, 1 simultaneous 60-second activation window. The SBIRS alert reached CENTCOM at 2:19 a.m. and INDOPACOM at 2:20 a.m. Both commands had been monitoring elevated threat indicators for 72 hours. Both had their contingency packages loaded. Both activated within 90 seconds of the alerts. Twin MERIDIAN was not a reaction. It was an execution. At 2:21 a.m., CENTCOM activated Operation Steel Curtain, the IRGC salvo response. At 2:22 a.m., INDOPACOM activated Operation Bashi Lock, the plan amphibious interdiction response. Both operations shared one resource, the B-1B Lancer Force. There were 8 B-1Bs on rotational alert across 2 bases, 4 at Al Udeid, 4 at Anderson. Each theater got 4. Each theater's 4 B-1Bs carried 24 JASSMER. The plan's model had assumed the B-1B force would be concentrated in response to one theater. It was not concentrated. It was split. Both theaters received full B-1B packages because both theaters had full B-1B packages pre-positioned. This was the operation the coordination framework had been designed to prevent. Simultaneous 2-theater activation was supposed to force a U.S. choice between theaters. Twin MERIDIAN eliminated the choice by pre-positioning assets for both simultaneously. The Persian Gulf theater executed first because the IRGC salvo was already in the air. 144 weapons inbound toward Al Udeid and USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, 63 Shahed 136 and Shahed 149 loitering munitions in 5 waves, 37 Fateh 313, and Ahmad ballistic missiles targeting Al Udeid, and 44 Hoveze cruise missiles on terrain-following profiles toward both targets. The defensive architecture, USS Dwight D. Eisenhower's Aegis screen, PAC-3 at Al Udeid, Thiad at the repositioned Saudi battery, E-2D Hawkeye overhead feeding contact solutions to every defensive node simultaneously. The EA-18G Growlers launched from USS Dwight D. Eisenhower at 2:24 a.m. reached their jamming orbits at 2:31 a.m. MALD-J packages degraded Shahed guidance coherence from 84% to 29% by the time the first Shahed wave entered engagement range. SM-2 and ESSM handled the first 3 waves with no leakers. The 4th wave, 19 Shahed, produced 2 that reached CRAM range. Both neutralized. The 5th wave, 16 Shahed, 1 reached Phalanx, CYWS at 620 meters. Neutralized. Fragments impacted the ocean 90 meters off the port beam. Of 37 ballistic missiles, 32 intercepted by SM-3 and PAC-3. 5 entered terminal phase. 4 intercepted by PAC-3 MSE. 1 Fateh 313 warhead impacted the northern vehicle staging area at Al Udeid. No aircraft damage. No personnel in the immediate area. Crater 14 meters wide in a gravel surface access road. Of 44 Hoveze cruise missiles, 31 intercepted by SEM-6 beyond the Gulf horizon, as acquired by the E-2D at 390 kilometers. 9 more intercepted by NUSUMs. 4 reached CRAM at Al Udeid. 3 neutralized. 1 impacted the eastern perimeter berm. No breach, no injuries. Total Persian Gulf intercept rate 139 of 144, 96.5%. 2 impacts on Al Udeid, a vehicle staging area crater and a perimeter berm impact. 0 mission-critical infrastructure affected. Carrier combat effective throughout, while the Persian Gulf defense was running. The Steel Curtain offensive package was executing in parallel. 4 B-1Bs from Al Udeid, airborne since 2:19 a.m., released their first JASSM-ER packages at 2:23 a.m. 96 precision munitions heading west toward IRGC launch infrastructure. 109 Tomahawk Block 5 from the carrier's surface screen, launched at 2:22 a.m. The IRGC's command network, already under USCYBERCOM intrusion since 1:47 a.m., began losing relay nodes at 2:31 a.m. as the first Tomahawks reached the coast. By 3:04 a.m., the IRGC Aerospace Force Command Network had fallen below coordinated operational threshold. 47 of 61 assigned aim points confirmed neutralized. 14 remaining deep tunnel complexes assigned to the second wave. The Philippine Sea theater ran on a parallel timeline, with different assets and a different problem geometry. The planned amphibious force was not yet in the Bashi Channel when Operation Bashi Lock activated. It was 140 kilometers west of the channel, moving at 11 knots. Time to the channel, approximately 12 hours. Time to a viable Luzon landing site, 19 hours. This was not a 60-minute war in the Philippine Sea. It was a 60-minute decision about whether to stop the force before it reached the channel, or engage it in the channel, or wait for it to exit the channel. IRGC chose before. The geometry of a strait is a constraint on the defender as well as the attacker. The open Philippine Sea, where the planned force was currently operating, offered approach angles, standoff distances, and targeting geometries that the Bashi Channel's confined waters would not. The force was stopped where it was most vulnerable, in the open ocean, before it reached the terrain that compressed the tactical picture. 4 B-1Bs from Andersen Air Force Base, airborne since 2:06 a.m. as part of Twin Meridian pre-positioning, received their Bashi Lock packages at 2:22 a.m. and began release runs from their positions over the Philippine Sea. First JASSM-ER release at 2:29 a.m. Time of flight to the planned force, 37 minutes. USS Carl Vinson, 310 kilometers northeast of the planned force, turned southwest at flank speed at 2:21 a.m. 36 F/A, 18F, and F-35C sorties launched between 2:24 and 2:41 a.m. Their primary weapons, LRASM for the transport echelon, JSOW for the corvette screen. The F-35Cs flew sensor-to-shooter profiles at 42,000 feet. Their EOTS systems feeding thermal tracking data on each planned vessel to the E-2D data link, which distributed targeting solutions across both the aircraft and USS Carl Vinson's Aegis combat system. The planned force's Type 056A corvette screen activated its HHQ-16 systems at 2:47 a.m. as F-35C radar emissions were detected at 90 kilometers. HHQ-16 fire solution against F-35C, marginal returns at that range. 3 missiles fired. All 3 missed. The F-35C's electronic warfare suite breaking lock at 34 kilometers on the first, the second passing 280 meters clear. The third detonating at proximity range but 190 meters off target. No damage. The corvette that fired was emitting actively. A harm from the lead F-35C arrived at 2:49 a.m. At 3:06 a.m., 47 minutes after the planned force changed course, the JASSM-ER packages reached the transport echelon. The 2 Type 071 LPDs received 4 JASSM-ER each, targeting propulsion and loading deck infrastructure. Both lost propulsion within 3 minutes of first impact. The 4 Type 072A landing ships received JSOW packages from the F/A-18F sorties, paired strikes on engine rooms and shaft compartments. 3 of 4 lost propulsion in the first wave. The 4th sustained propulsion damage but retained partial mobility. It continued northeast at 4 knots. An F-35C sensor track updated its position in real time. A second JSOW assignment reached it at 3:14 a.m. Propulsion lost. The 5 Type 056A corvettes, one already non-operational from the harm strike, received LRASM packages from the F-35C sorties at 3:08 a.m. 3 lost propulsion from direct LRASM impact. 1 activated its Type 1130 CIWS and achieved a proximity intercept on the inbound LRASM. The weapon was structurally compromised but continued to the target vessel on a degraded ballistic path, impacting the hull below the waterline aft of the engine room. The ship's propulsion was intact, but she began taking on water from the hull breach. She was non-operational within 11 minutes as flooding progressed. The 5th Corvette turned southwest at 3:11 a.m., not damaged, executing a withdrawal order received from the planned force commander before his command ship lost communications. By 3:19 a.m., 11 of 11 planned vessels in the forward echelon had either lost propulsion, sustained structural damage, or withdrawn. None had reached the Bashi Channel. The closest had covered 23 kilometers of the 140 kilometers to the channel entrance. This was the moment the coordination framework had been designed to create. U.S. forces committed in 2 theaters simultaneously, assets divided, response degraded. The plan's model showed that twin meridian conditions would produce a Philippine Sea response at 60 to 70% of full capacity, because the remaining 30 to 40% would be committed to the Persian Gulf. The model was accurate on the numbers. It was inaccurate on the conclusion. 60 to 70% of a response architecture that had been doubled in anticipation of exactly this split still exceeded the force required to stop 11 vessels in the open Philippine Sea. The pre-positioning had not split the response. It had pre-split it, allocating assets to both theaters before the split was required, so that when the split came, both theaters had what they needed. The IRGC and planned desperation moves came within 4 minutes of each other. At 3:22 a.m. in the Persian Gulf, the IRGC activated 14 NOR coastal anti-ship missiles from Bandar Abbas batteries targeting USS Dwight D. Eisenhower's last confirmed position. The carrier had repositioned 34 kilometers during the engagement. 8 NOR seekers searched the programmed area and found open water. 6 activated wide area search mode. 3 acquired the carrier's actual position. SM-6 intercepted all 3 at 3:26 a.m. At 3:26 a.m. in the Philippine Sea, 18 DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missiles launched from Fujian Province targeted USS Carl Vinson. The carrier had repositioned 28 kilometers from her last confirmed position. 14 DF-21D were intercepted by SM-3 from USS Carl Vinson's Aegis screen. 4 entered terminal seeker phase. 1 acquired the carrier's actual position and executed a terminal maneuver. SM-6 intercepted 3:31 a.m., 31 kilometers altitude. 2 carriers. 2 targeted simultaneously. Both repositioned during the engagement. Both engagement solutions partially stale. Both SM-6 intercepts successful. At 3:34 a.m., the IRGC Aerospace Force Command Network transmitted its last coordinated message, a launch authorization for a reserve EMAD battery, whose position had already been assigned to an inbound Tomahawk. The Tomahawk arrived at 3:41 a.m. After 3:34 a.m., fragmented, isolated IRGC transmissions from units with no coherent picture. At 3:37 a.m., the planned force commander's command ship lost its last functioning communications relay. After 3:37 a.m., the withdrawing corvette received no further orders. It continued southwest. The disabled vessels in the forward echelon transmitted distress signals on international maritime frequencies. P8. A aircraft tracked every vessel continuously. At 3:41 a.m., 1 hour and 22 minutes after the first IRGC launch and the first planned course change, both adversary networks had fallen below coordinated operational threshold simultaneously. The signals intelligence analyst at Fort Meade, who had first identified the coordination channel, was still at her desk at 3:41 a.m. Eastern Time, 2:41 a.m. in the Gulf, 3:41 a.m. in the Philippine Sea. She was monitoring the channel's traffic in real time. At 3:37 a.m., the planned force commander's last transmission went out. At 3:34 a.m., the IRGC had sent its last coordinated message. She logged both termination events. She noted the 4-minute gap between them. She would include it in the morning assessment. The coordination that had taken 11 months to develop had produced simultaneous activation. The U.S. response had produced resolution within 4 minutes of simultaneous. The gap between 11 months of planning and 4 minutes of difference was the measure of what the intelligence access had been worth. She saved the log at 3:44 a.m. and sent it to the distribution list. Then she got up and made coffee. The second wave assessment would arrive in an hour and would need review before the 7 o'clock brief. The CAOC at Udeid and the Indo-Pacific Command, CAOC at Camp HM, Smith were running parallel second wave assessments at 3:45 a.m. 2 databases, 2 sets of green, yellow, and red indicators, 2 lists of targets requiring follow-on engagement, 2 second wave packages being compiled, 1 operation in the Persian Gulf, 47 of 61 IRGC aim points green, 14 red, deep tunnels in the Philippine Sea, 9 of 11 planned vessels in the forward echelon non-operational, 2 damaged and halted, requiring reassessment, 2 theaters, 2 simultaneous assessments. Neither had achieved the operational result that mattered. Both had stopped what they had been authorized to stop. Combined cost of U.S. munitions expended across both theaters, $3.1 billion. Steel curtain alone, $1.7 billion. Bashi lock, $1.4 billion. Combined estimated replacement value of adversary military assets neutralized, $19.6 billion across both theaters. Persian Gulf exchange ratio, 1 to 6.1. Philippine Sea exchange ratio, 1 to 7.4. Combined, 1 to 6.3. The coordination framework signed 11 months earlier in Beijing had been built on one premise: that simultaneous 2-theater activation would force a U.S. resource allocation choice. Twin MERIDIAN had been built on one counter-premise: that the U.S. would not need to make that choice if both theaters were pre-resourced before the simultaneous activation occurred. The framework assumed a reactive posture. Twin MERIDIAN assumed USCYBERCOM access to the framework's communications channel. That access had existed since month 3. The framework had been informing U.S. planning for 8 months before it was executed. Every adjustment made to the coordination plan had been visible. Every asset repositioned in anticipation of the framework's activation had been tracked. The simultaneous activation that was designed to be a surprise had been a known contingency for 4 months. The framework had been designed in Beijing. The counter had been designed in Hawaii. Both were executed simultaneously at 2:19 a.m. One of them had been running longer. At 3:41 a.m., both adversary networks fell silent within 4 minutes of each other. In 2 separate oceans on 2 separate displays, 2 watch officers watched the threat picture on their screens reduce from active to residual. One in the Persian Gulf, one in the Philippine Sea. Neither knew what the other's display showed. The CAOC at Udeid and the CAOC at Camp HM, Smith were already talking to each other on the combined Twin MERIDIAN assessment channel. The individual watch officers would read the combined assessment in the morning brief. The machine had been running in 2 theaters from the same moment. It finished in 2 theaters within 4 minutes of each other. The coordination the adversaries had spent 11 months developing had produced simultaneous activation. The counter had produced simultaneous resolution. The databases were classified. The elapsed time was not. 1 hour and 22 minutes.